Oh, hello, Chairman of the board here, or Vice Chairman of the board. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Brian, are you doing both cases tonight, presenting?
Yes.
Do I look like a ghost to the rest of you too?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Yes.
I got to figure that one out.
All right, I'm looking at the participants real quick just to see who we have on the line.
To let you know that we should be live here at this time on Channel 8 and the web, so everyone's aware.
Thank you, Terry.
So the time is 4:31. Alexa, will you call the roll to see who we have here?
Yes. Commissioner Yost,
I'm here.
Commissioner Jones,
Here.
Commissioner Kamak,
Can you hear me?
Commissioner Kamak. Yes,
I'm here.
thank you. Commissioner Anderson, sorry, Commissioner Anderson,
Maybe we could unmute her one more time.
Can you hear me now?
yes,
Yes.
Okay.
thank you. Then Vice Chairman Amador.
I will go ahead and introduce the city staff that are present. Jason Rogers, the Community Development Director. Matt Hayter, Deputy City Attorney. Steve Timms, Planning Manager. Jennifer Jones, Principal Planner. Brian Marine, Planner. Jenna Lowry, Management Analyst. Trisha Mason, Community Development Manager. And Alexa Ulam, Administrative Specialist. With that said, I'll ask for a motion for the meeting minutes for approval. Since I cannot see everybody, I'm going to ask for someone to raise their hand. So Commissioner Kamak, if you can I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
So moved.
And do I have a second? I can't see everybody. Commissioner Anderson?
I second that motion.
Very good. Thank you. So can we have a roll call vote? So let me go with Commissioner Anderson.
Aye.
Commissioner Kamak.
Yes.
Commissioner Jones.
Yes.
Commissioner Yost.
Actually, he doesn't vote. Was he there at the last meeting?
No, I don't believe so.
he was not, so he will not be able to vote, and I will vote with a yes, as I was there. So it looks like the meeting minutes approved. So let me keep moving. So tonight we have a few cases in front of us. Let me go ahead and have staff present the cases for us that we have.
So tonight's first case is case number Z-692-98-20. Nativity Lutheran Church is requesting to rezone from agricultural AG to C3 Regional Commercial District to make the existing use legal conforming and to allow the construction of a concealed telecommunications facility at 12500 East 104th Avenue. Mr. Brian Marin will be presenting the case on behalf of the city this evening.
Thank you. Alexa, could you share the presentation, please?
Yes, just a moment.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. As Matt said, today I will be presenting case Z692-98-20. The applicant is in Nativity Lutheran Church. Their location is at 12500 East 104th Avenue. And the applicant tonight will be Michael Bennick. And the request is for a zone change from agricultural to C3 Regional Commercial District. Next slide, please. This property is located at 12500 East 104th Avenue. It's about 5 acres. It was properly annexed into the city in 1996, and it was granted the current agricultural zoning through case 692-98. The current use is a church, and that was granted by use by permit through case A1403-98. The future land use for this site, it's mixed use. Next slide, please. As you can see, the area surrounding the site, it has a mix of uses such as commercial, residential, utility, and single family use on throughout the site. Next slide, please. Here's an aerial view of the site. Next slide, please. Here's the current photo of the site. Next slide, please. Okay, so the current request, as I mentioned, it's a zone change from agricultural to C3 Regional Commercial District. This request will bring the existing use into compliance with their current development code standards, and additionally, the proposed zone change will allow the property owner, Nativity Lutheran, to expand its footprint in accordance with LDC commercial standards. Additionally, the property owner intends to lease a part of their property, approximately 900 square feet, to construct a new concealed telecommunication towers in the rear of the property. This approval will require the approval. This tower will require the approval of a BOA, of the BOA. Next slide, please. Here's the proposed development. The proposed tower will be placed in the rear and will have architectural features that will match that of the principal structure. Throughout the site has been located in order to provide at least 100 feet of separation between each property line, and in order to avoid potential conflicts with adjacent neighbors. Next slide, please. As part of the DRT analysis, it has been determined that the existing property meets all C3 design and bulk standards, and that C3 is the appropriate zone classification due to its arterial location and proposed improvements. The applicant intends to invest in improvements for the property, but the agricultural zoning currently limits the types of upgrades available for the property. Additionally, the building expansions to include the concealed tower are currently not allowed on agricultural zoning. Lastly, according to our DRT analysis, this site meets all approval criteria for the zone change. Next slide, please. The zone change is consistent with the policies and goal of the city's comprehensive plan. It's compatible with the area and its surrounding uses. The site is already served by all utilities to address for any particular issues in the future. The use will serve and balance the uses in the surrounding area. And there is a public interest in changing the zoning to match its use. And it will also bring a wider range of cell phone coverage to the northern range area. Next slide, please. As part of the required public notification, 19 property owners were notified of this zone change. There was also a notice placed in the Commerce City Sentinel Express, and 2 signs were posted on the property. Additionally, all publication notification met the requirements of Resolution 2020-30 to provide notice that the meeting may be conducted electronically. Next slide, please. Okay. Sorry about that. The property was actually posted on June 26th, and as of July 1st, staff has received no comments, questions, or objections to the proposal. Next slide, please. At this time, DRT recommends that the Planning Commission recommend approval to the City Council regarding this case. Next slide, please. That concludes this presentation, but I am available for any questions that you might have. Additionally, the applicant is also present to speak on behalf of this request and may answer any questions that the board might have at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. At this time, I would like to outline 3 ground rules real quick before we get into the question part by the commissioners. So commissioners, before you speak, if you could allow for 2 seconds for staff to be able to unmute you so that you can speak. We will go ahead and I'm going to go in alphabetical order by last name, just so that I can get everybody, because I cannot see everyone in the meeting. And then also, if you have spoken and you have another question, please raise your hand in the Zoom meeting so that we can come back to your specific questions. Thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and start with Commissioner Anderson. Do you have any questions of the case?
No questions.
Commissioner Kamak, do you have any questions of the case?
I do not.
Commissioner Jones, any questions for the case?
No.
Commissioner Yost, any questions for staff of the case? If we could unmute Commissioner Yost, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
What will the tower look like? I think I read somewhere it was going to look like a bell tower.
That is correct. The proposed tower will resemble a bell tower.
Okay, thank you.
And myself as the chair, I do not have any questions, as I'm familiar with reading through the packet in the case. With that being said, thank you. Look, no other questions. Maybe we could invite the applicant to speak on the case if they have anything to add or they'd like to speak.
Mr. Bieniek?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Mike Beanick. I'm with LCC Telecom Services. We are located at 10700 West Higgins Road, Suite 240, Rosemont, Illinois. And we represent Vertical Bridge. They are proposing to erect a stealth cell tower on this property. As was mentioned, it is designed to look like a bell tower, as I mentioned back on the 26th. Basically, what it's going to look like is we are leasing a 30 by 30 lease parcel. It's going to be south of the church. And basically, the bell tower is going to be a three-legged tower with 3 panels of fiberglass type material to hide the antennas on the top. And on those panels, there will be a large cross on each face of the tower to make it look like a bell tower on the church property. And again, as was stated earlier, we are going to mimic the materials of the church to make it look like it blends in well.
Thank you, Mr. Bennick. Is there anyone else? I see 2 other people, the pastor and possibly the Nativity Lutheran Leadership person, Jim, that might want to speak. I guess I don't have the list of people who signed up to talk for the case, so I need to direct staff to see if they can send that to me first, because I don't have it. But is anybody else from the applicant willing to want to speak?
This is Pastor Rich Gianzaro. Am I live?
Yes, you're live.
Oh, just wish to express gratitude again for the city's work with us. It's been a easy process, and just expressing thanks. And I am present. And I know Jim Versaman, who is on our leadership team, is as well, in case others had a question for us specifically. With that, I don't have anything else to say, and thank you kindly.
With that being said, and the limited people that I can see, I'm going to go down the roll call again by alphabetical order of the commissioners to see if anyone has questions of the applicant. Commissioner Anderson, do you have questions of the applicant?
No questions.
Commissioner Kamak, do you have any questions of the applicant?
I do not.
Commissioner Jones, do you have any questions of the applicant?
No.
Commissioner Yost, do you have any questions of the applicant?
No, I do not.
And myself, Commissioner Amador, do not have any questions of the applicant. Are there, and I can't see this, is there anyone from the public that might be wanting to ask questions of the applicant? So I need to lean on staff for this one.
There were no comments for this case by the public.
That means no one signed up for the comment. Is that what you mean?
That's correct.
Correct. There were no registered testimonies.
Very good. Thank you for that clarification. With that being said, can I call for a motion? And I'm going to just ask Commissioner Kamak to make that motion if possible.
Yes. Mr. Commissioner, I move that the Planning Commission enter a finding that the requested zone change for the property located at 12500 East 104th Avenue, contained in case Z-692-98-20, meets the criteria of the Land Development Code, and based upon such finding, recommend that the City Council approve the zone change.
Thank you. And I'm going to ask Commissioner Yost, can I have a second?
I second the motion.
Thank you. Is there any questions among the commissioners in regards to the case before we call for the vote? Seeing and hearing none, can we call for a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Commissioner Yost,
Yes.
thank you. Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
thank you. Commissioner Kamak,
Yes.
thank you. Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
thank you. And Vice Chairman Amador,
Yes.
thank you.
Congratulations. My dog is going crazy because of fireworks outside, so give me 1 second. But congratulations on the approval to this city council. I'm going to take 1 quick second to close my door, and I'll be right back. And maybe staff could begin the next case.
So with that in mind, I'll go ahead and start introducing the next case here. So the next case is CU-124-20. Stadium Auto Parts is requesting a conditional use permit to develop a salvage yard located at 9750 East 96th Avenue, zoned I3, heavy intensity industrial district. Once again, Mr. Brian Marin will be presenting the case on behalf of the city.
Can you enlarge it, Alexa, please?
Brian, is that okay, or do you want me to zoom in more?
Can everyone see that okay?
Can you use the full screen option as opposed to the scale option?
Is that better? Sorry, I don't work with this too often.
Try window and see if you can do full screen.
Alternatively, since this is a PowerPoint, you can probably just hit that. There you go.
There we go.
Sorry about that. Thank you.
It's okay. All right. All right, so the next case will be CU-124-20. It's a conditional use permit for Stadium Auto Parts. The applicant is Norman Wright, who is also the business owner for Stadium Auto Parts. And the request is a conditional use permit for a new salvage yard in an I3 zone property. Next slide, please. Okay, a little bit of background of this in this particular property. The address is 97 East 96th Avenue. The lot size is about 25.18 acres. It was originally annexed into Commerce City in 2007 through case AN-220, and its current zoning is I3. At this time, the lot is undeveloped, and the future land use for the site is general industrial. Next slide, please. Okay, the proposed site is located in an area developed and planned for general industrial purposes, with the properties directly north, west, and south designated for high intensity industrial uses, and currently zone I3, which allows the broadest industrial uses. Next slide, please. At this time, the applicant is requesting the approval of a CUP in order to construct and operate an auto salvage yard. This proposed project will include a 31,000 square feet building with office space, vehicle dismantling area, and a warehouse storage area, an outdoor storage area for the placement of car shells in the rear of the property, as well as site improvements such as landscaping, fencing, detention pond, and dust-free surfaces. Next slide, please. The proposed FAR for this particular building will be 0.29. And as part of this application, the applicant has also applied for a minor modification in the reduction of FAR of 50%. The landscape area will be about 7.35 acres, and it encompasses the entire perimeter, as well as the detention pond and front yard landscape. The proposed access to this site is along East 96th Avenue, and the applicant is providing adequate parking for both employees and customers. Next slide, please. As you can see, the site is mostly narrow with one access along East 96th Avenue and runs north for about a half a mile. Next slide, please. These are some of the current photos that you can see as you drive along East 96th Avenue. As you can see, the site is undeveloped and it's adjacent to the O'Brien Canal. Next slide, please. So the project will be completed in 2 phases, with the first phase encompassing the proposed building on the south end of the property, access roads, perimeter fencing, outdoor storage, landscaping, and detention pond as depicted on the plan. You will see it in the next 2 slides, what it will encompass for phase 1. Next slide, please. Next slide. All right, the second phase is expected to be completed 2 years after the opening of phase 1, and it will include the rest of the outdoor storage, as well as the remaining site work improvements as shown in the development plan. Next slide, please. Here's some of the current elevations for the proposed building. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, so as part of the proposed operation, trucks will be required to access the site along East 96th Avenue and drive salvage vehicles to the rear of the building, where vehicles will be where pieces will be removed, cleaned, and stored for resale in the warehouse. Then after, car shells will be moved to the outdoor storage area, where they will be lined up 5 in a row with no stacking. After 140 days, car shells will be crushed on site and moved out of the property for the next step of the recycling process. Next slide, please. Although most of the daily operations will take place indoors, the applicant has proposed a robust landscape throughout the entire site in order to screen the outdoor storage area from daily traffic along East 96th Avenue, as well as adjacent property owners. The landscape will also be performed in phases with the phase 1 and phase 2. Next slide, please. This will also be part of phase 1. Next slide. And you can see where the definition takes place from phase 1 to phase 2. Next slide, please. Next. Okay, in addition to a robust landscape, the site also benefits from its proximity to the O'Brien Canal and its high embankments to create additional screening due to the topography of the site as shown here. Next slide. Moreover, as part of the requirements for a minor modification, the applicant has agreed to install a precast cement wall, or CMU, with the metal security gate along the entrance to the site to further conceal the use from daily traffic. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned previously, the subject property is directly adjacent to the O'Brien Canal. And as part of the minor modification for FAR relief, the applicant has increased landscape and buffering by 50% along the canal. As part of the landscaping buffer, the applicant and FRICO have agreed on a landscape buffer that meets the needs of both parties. Next slide, please. The proposed landscape buffer will result in a 25 feet buffer with 10 feet from the toe of the slope to the property not containing any landscape, and the additional 15 will contain landscape. The proposed buffer will prevent future proposed landscape from taking water from the O'Brien Canal. Next slide, please. And as an added benefit, the proposed landscape buffer will provide a new city amenity in the form of increased urban canopy while providing concealment to the area. This new urban canopy will run along the future proposed regional trail as depicted in the city's approved Perry Waste Action Plan guidelines for parks, trails, and open space. However, there's no set day for improvements on this part of the trail. Next slide, please. As part of the CUP process, the applicant held 2 neighborhood meetings, one on Wednesday, December 4th, and the second one on Tuesday, March 3rd. Both were held at Bison Ridge Recreation Center. There were only 2 property owners that attended the meetings, and their main concern was that the proposed use will attract more crime. However, there were no concerns or objections from our police department. Next slide, please. So through the city's DRT analysis, it has been determined that the proposed use is compliant with the comprehensive plan as well as the land development code. The site layout is appropriate for the use due to the fact that it provides limited visibility into the site. The majority of the proposed use will be performed indoors, and the applicant has proposed additional concealment opportunities to conceal the use. The impact to traffic conditions in the area are expected to be minimal, as the proposed use only estimates around 38 trips per day. Additionally, there are no objections from our fire department or Commerce City Police Department. Next slide. As part of the approval criteria, the proposed use will not be a substantial or undue adverse effect on adjacent property owners, and any adverse effect is mitigated to the maximum extent possible. The characteristics of the site are suitable for the proposed use, and the site is also adequately served and will not put undue burden on improvements, facilities, or services. There's adequate assurance from Stadium Auto Parts of continued maintenance of the site, and there is no evidence that the use will violate federal, state, or local requirements. Additionally, there's a community need for the use of the proposed site, as it provides lower prices to residents of Commerce City. Next slide, please. So based on DRT's analysis, as well as additional conversations with the applicant, the staff is proposing 3 conditions that deal with the use of the subject property, with the first condition stating that this conditional use permit is for the storage of salvage of vehicles to include passenger cars, single axle trucks, 1-ton trucks, vans, delivery vans, Class C RVs, and small type shuttle buses. This will allow for this condition is specifically to specify the type of vehicles that will be allowed on site. Next slide, please. Condition B states that all work performed on vehicles, including repair, draining of fluids, and dismantling, shall occur entirely within the building. The applicant will be able to perform dismantling of additional pieces from car shells in the outdoor storage, so long as it does not require the drainage of fluid prior to removing additional pieces. This condition is to ensure the safety as well as the protection of the environment. Next slide, please. And while I will not read this part, condition C will require the applicant to present yearly reports to the director of CD detailing all complaints from adjacent property owners, as well as how those complaints were addressed. On or after August 30th, 2025, if the yearly reports as well as reported violations indicate that the use is not compliant with the CUP approval criteria, the director may submit the CUP to Planning Commission as well as City Council for review of the conditions. The review will be limited to the purpose of identifying and imposing conditions reasonably necessary to address the complaints demonstrating non-compliance with the conditional use permit approval criteria and will be rationally related to the conditional use permit approval criteria. Next slide, please. As part of the public notification requirements, 49 property owners were notified by mail. A notice was placed in the Commerce City Sentinel Express, and 2 signs were posted on the property. Additionally, all public notification met the requirement of Resolution 2020-30 to provide notice that the meeting may be conducted electronically. Next slide, please. As of July 1st, staff has received questions from one of the adjacent property owners expressing concern to future property values, noise and environmental pollutions, as well as screening proposed for the CUP. Next slide, please. And at this time, DRT recommends that the Planning Commission recommend approval to City Council regarding this case subject to the 3 conditions. Next slide, please. So that concludes my presentation. However, I am available to answer any questions, and the applicant is also present to speak on behalf of this request and answer any questions that the board might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Planner Marine. This is time where we will go ahead and give each commissioner an opportunity to ask the planner questions. Again, give yourself 2 seconds for them to unmute you, and I will go in alphabetical order by last name, and I will go last. And if you think of something after you're gone through the whole roll, please raise your hand in the Zoom meeting. Commissioner Anderson, do you have any questions of staff?
No questions at this time.
Commissioner Kamak, any questions of staff?
Just a quick one, and I didn't go back and compare to previous information that we had, but it appears that condition C about the review of the conditional use permit has been altered to be more in line with what was discussed with the applicant at some point in time relative to them not having to go through an entire review at that time, and subject only to any questions or defaults that they may have had between now and then, the 5-year time. Is that correct?
Yes, Commissioner, that is correct.
Good job. Thank you.
Commissioner Jones.
No questions.
Commissioner Yost, any questions?
Yeah, I do have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
If I understand this correctly, if a property owner, adjacent property owner, or someone else has a complaint, do they go to the city or do they go to Stadium? And then how, then if I understand, here's what I understand. The complaint goes first to Stadium, and then they try to resolve it with the neighbor. And then if it isn't resolved, it goes on to the city. Is that correct? I'm just a little fuzzy on this.
Yes, Commissioner, that is correct. Stadium Auto Parts has agreed to try to mitigate any issues with potential complaints from adjacent property owners, but if the issue remains as part of the daily operations, the property owner is able to contact neighborhood services and submit a formal complaint.
Understood. One more question. If I understand this correctly, during the phase one, it's going to be all encompassed in the warehouse. And then after phase two is completed, it'll be the warehouse and the outside yard. Is that correct?
Sort of, Commissioner. There is about 15 acres that will be part of the first phase for outdoor storage. The additional 10 acres of outdoor storage will be completed in phase two.
Understand. Thank you.
So it looks like we have the Deputy City Attorney that may want to chime in here. I see his hand raised.
Thank you. So I just wanted to clarify about enforcement issues there. There's nothing that I read in this condition that prohibits the city from doing enforcement in the normal course of, their regular enforcement activities. And there's nothing that would require a neighbor to first complain to the property owner. So I just want to be very clear that we're not changing our enforcement process as it relates to this particular applicant or this particular property.
Okay, so the complaint goes to the city, and then the city brings it back to Stadium. Is that correct?
So in the normal course of events, if the city receives a complaint about a land use, they'd probably have a neighborhood services inspector respond. And if they find a violation of the code or of the terms of the CUP, they would probably write an NOV, notice of violation, at that time.
Understood. Thank you.
And I also see staff has one more hand up. Steve Timms, are you want to chime in, please?
Yeah, just a clarification. When we were talking with the applicant over the past week, one of the things that really resonated with both the city and the applicant is they want to be, good neighbors to the community and to the city and vice versa. So there could be situations where an adjoining property owner reaches out to the applicant directly that the city's not involved, right? And so they're certainly welcome to handle questions or complaints that way. They don't have to go through the city necessarily to get those resolved. The city's one option, but not the only option.
I got it. Thank you. I have no additional questions.
Thank you. And I have two questions of staff. One is, in that condition C, it appears that, and it's not real clear, after 5 years, will they have to come back for renewal of their conditional use permit, or is that done administratively? Because it doesn't really say how that goes.
Yeah, at this time, it will go through an administrative approval if it continues after 5 years without any major concerns.
Thank you. And then my second comment is more for staff. Thank you for working with the applicant from what I've understand and what I've read through the packet and some of the correspondence that's been that working with the applicant to define some of the particular types of vehicles that will be, I'm going to call that dismantled for repurpose. Thank you. With that being said, if anyone else has another comment, so I'm going to go with Matt Hayter, the Deputy City Attorney first.
So I just wanted to clarify on Mr. Marin's last answer there. So the staff does not have authority to administratively approve a CUP. So what that condition basically says is there's an opportunity for staff to bring this back in front of the Planning Commission and then subsequently City Council. But basically there's no automatic termination of the CUP the way this currently exists.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, hopefully that clarifies that last answer.
And I see one more hand, Mr. Steve Timms.
Yeah, so just to build off of that, so you're right. So it's not a staff approval, but it's an opportunity if the director so chooses to bring it back the Planning Commission and City Council to kind of reevaluate and see how things have been going, and if there's an opportunity to add any reasonable conditions or updates accordingly. So.
Thank you. Do we have any other commissioners that would like to speak? Raise your hand. I'll give it 5 seconds. Seeing none. And now I'll close our planning piece presentation, and I'd like to invite the applicant to the meeting to be able to talk about or present any additional information. And I believe it's going to be James West Gardner.
No, it will be Mark is Delgado is the applicant.
There we go.
That's the public portion.
Right. Got it. Sorry, Mark Delgado. Is there anything additional you would like to add to the case as the applicant?
We did just have one. I'm here with Norman, and there's a contiguous adjacent landowner that advised us that he wanted to speak on behalf of himself relative to this development. And I don't know if he was registered. His name's Tim McManus. And just because of some time constraints related to some family health issues, he had asked if he could speak first, and then we can revert back to the original anticipated presentation.
I guess I want to stay in order of the applicant being able to add anything additional. I do see 3 people, or at least 2 people that are requested to speak. I
think that's okay in that case. I think I'll turn it over to Norman to speak on behalf of his operations.
Thank you.
Yes, this is Norman Wright, the owner of Stadium Auto Parts. We had a PowerPoint presentation we put on last meeting, and I'd like to ask the committee if they'd like to re-look at that. I'd be glad to redo that if they feel it's necessary.
So I will go through the list by alphabetical order again to see if anybody on the Planning Commission would like to review the PowerPoint presentation. I know it was quite a bit long last time. So maybe if we could kind of go through that and generalize a little more. I'll go first. I'm pretty familiar with the case and the presentation that was out there. But I would probably ask that we go through it just kind of, I'm going to call it a little bit speedy so that people that are in the audience can see what the application is about. So I would be in favor of that. Commissioner Anderson? Can we unmute her?
Yeah, thank you. I would agree with our chairman that while I feel like I understand from the presentation that was made last week, maybe a quick refresher would be helpful.
Very good. So let's go ahead and just do that we have a couple of commissioners willing to go through the presentation one more time. That would be great.
Okay, and I'll make it as quickly as I can. How's that? So if we get the presentation put on, please.
Yes, just 1 moment.
Okay, the first slide, this basically is our company. The company was formed in 1945. We're celebrating our 75th anniversary. We have 2 locations, one in Denver and one in Westminster. And the Denver location, we've been there since 1980. And the Westminster location, we were there since 1974. Next slide, please. Here's a picture of the Denver location. It's a pre-stressed building. We occupy about 4.3 acres. And we're right on I-25 and 8th Avenue, right off the freeway. Next slide, please. This picture of our Westminster location. We've been there, like I said, since '74 and serving the Westminster community. The next slide, please. Stadium Auto Parts was founded by my father, Hyman Wright, in 1945. Hyman founded the company right after the war. Norman took it over in 1971. I purchased it from my father. I am the past president of the Automotive Recyclers Association, the International Association, as well as the Colorado Auto Recyclers Association. I'm the current chairman of our International Government Affairs Committee and of the Colorado Association, very active in the associations and the community. Next slide, please. EPA has always said there's 3 forms of recycling: reduce, reuse, and recycle. Auto recycling is keyed on the reuse portion. We feel that's the best portion. You don't have to put any more resources in the product. And why not reuse something that can easily be reused and save our country as well as our earth, all our resources. Next slide, please. Stadium purchases total loss vehicles from insurance company losses. These vehicles were declared a total loss. We save consumers both from their premiums and alternative parts, lower cost recycled parts, parts sold with extended warranties, including labor. We have some warranties we also give as lifetime warranties. Parts are cleaned and tested before they're sold. Computerized inventory, including barcoding, nationally as well as internationally known. What makes stadiums special?
Next slide.
Next slide, please. We're using the latest technologies available in our industry. We're tracking every request. We track all requests so that we know what to purchase and what to save on each vehicle. Parts removed and cleaned and racked for immediate sale. Like I said, over 75 years in business. 80% of our business is actually B2B, that we're selling to collision shops, dealerships, garages. The reason for that is that the vehicle now is so technology advanced that the average person no longer can work on his car. So it looks like the repairs of vehicles is being shifted to the service industry, and that's who we serve mostly. 20% are to retail customers who are able to work on those vehicles. Parts available on company website. We also have an eBay store, and we also have a part of many search engines. So we're sending parts all over the country as well as the world. We save consumers money compared to new parts, especially OEM parts, and we reduce insurance premiums because the insurance industry relies on us to buy the salvage and recover what they can. And they're one of our chief consumers of our parts because they use the parts to reduce the severity of the accidents. So without the industry, the insurance rates would go up, and we control that insurance rate for the consumer. Next slide, please. Basically, we purchase the vehicles and we clean and put the parts in racks. We're saving customers both lower premiums. These are examples of some of the racks we're using. There's wheel racks. These are door racks. Next slide. And here's inside the building are transmissions, rear ends, engines, etc. Next slide, please. How do we protect our environment? All vehicles are inspected upon arrival to see if there's any leakages. Vehicles are dismantled inside the building. Recycled parts removed for sale for reuse. All fluids are drained. Oil we remove and we store for heating the buildings and waste oil heaters. Antifreeze are processed through a reclaimer and sold for recycled use. Washer fluids removed and sold for reuse. Gas and diesel fuels are drained and used in company vehicles. Freon is collected through a recycler and sold for reuse. Tires are sold for reuse and are shipped for recycling. The tires we allowed to put 4 tires in every crushed car we do. And the fluff from the crushing experience goes to the landfills, which is about 8% of the vehicle, and it's used to keep down the dust. So basically, we're recycling almost the entire vehicle. All recycled parts are drained before storage. Metals then are separated and are used for recycling. In Colorado, almost all the recycled metals go to Colorado Fuel and Iron and are used in railroad ties and fencing and nails, etc. Next slide, please. These are the double walled tanks that we're using, vacuum fed. They're double lined and we contain all the oil. Next slide, please. Stadium Arts has community involvement. We volunteer our vehicles for the fire department. We use them for training. We also volunteer for law enforcement. We use them for VIN identification. Environmental agencies uses our facilities for training on stormwater. Schools and community groups come down for tours for education on what is involved with recycling of automobiles. And we sponsor youth groups and teams and activities. We feel we're the solution to the automotive waste. Next slide, please. This is an award we just recently received from the Westminster Fire Department for training of their people. And this shows you how they train their people on saving lives. Next slide. Why auto recycling? It's the best form of recycling, reuse. It's the oldest and largest recycling industry in the world. Eliminates our country's automotive waste. Provides alternative, original equipment parts at substantial savings to the consumers. Protects good, we provide good paying jobs, we pay taxes, and we make a profit. And the industry has not asked for $1 of subsidies as most recycling industries do. We feel we're the solution to the automotive waste, and it's something every community needs to support. Next slide, please. That's what automotive recycling has evolved into, and Stadium Auto Parts is a leader, and we feel will be a benefit to the Commerce City community as well as the entire state and national. That's the end of my presentation, except we have the next slides are about how the property is going to look, and Mark will talk on that.
Thank you, Norman. Yeah, these next slides are really brief here. That depicting the the overall site relative to its context, so you can get a sense of really the extent of what's really going to be visible from 96th Avenue, as well as from the adjacent properties, as you can see both on the east, west, and north sides. With the east side having the Frico Canal and the grade difference with the berming around the canal makes it very difficult for any any incoming views from the outside to see into the property. Next slide. And again, this is just a close-up of the entryway and really where most 99% of the public will be viewing the facility. The entire project's really been designed to address planning staff's concern about buffering and screening of the outdoor storage component, and so we've strategically placed the building, fencing, landscaping facing 96th Avenue in order to address those concerns and working collaboratively with staff during this process. And then there's a final slide here is just with just some renderings of on the last slide. Next slide, please. Of what the building, looking at it from 96th Avenue, it's a site cast tilt building with the articulation, glass, site cast tilt construction that we worked with planning staff in ensuring that the exterior facade meets and or exceeds all of the minimum architectural standards for this area. We have the entire design team here to answer any questions, including I'm on the architectural side. We have the civil, landscape, anyone that needs answer. If there are any questions related to the design, we're here. So thank you to the chair, to the rest of the commission and city staff for coming back in a short time frame for us. We really do appreciate that and are here to answer any questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you for the additional information and presentation. At this time, I'd like to open it up through a roll call again to the commissioners. Again, please allow yourself a couple seconds for staff to unmute you. And then if we have additional comments after you speak, please raise your hand. So I'm going to go in reverse order now. So Commissioner Yost, do you have any questions of the applicant?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh. How tall is the fence?
The fence is 8 feet tall, facing the canal and on the east side of the property there.
Okay. Okay. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Jones, any questions of the applicant?
Me?
Yes, Commissioner Jones, any additional questions?
No questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Kamak, any additional questions of the applicant?
Yes, I'm curious. Will this operation replace or supplement and how your other two operations are in the metro area? And I thought I read at one point that there's roughly 100 jobs, or how many jobs are involved in the operation once it's up and going full speed in a couple years?
The operation before the COVID, we had over 30 people. What we're doing is trying to combine the two existing operations into one, both for efficiency and also the land values that were added in the other locations have become so excessive that we really believe that this would be much more efficient to operate on one location. We hope to have 40 to 50 once we fully get up and running. Several years from now, once we get phase 2, it may go up to 60 or 70, I don't know. But 30, 35 is our normal course of operations.
Gotcha. Do you know if any of your employees live in Colorado Springs or in Commerce City? Hopefully not Colorado Springs.
Yeah, matter of fact, my manager, his name is Robert, lives very close to the site. His address is Henderson, but I've learned that's all Commerce City now. And most of my employees do live north. We took also a poll, and over 50% of our local customers are in the northern area. We serve almost every shop in Commerce City and in the other northern parts of the metro area. We've been there a long time, so we feel a lot of our customers are in this area, and we'll be able to save them quite a bit of money.
Thank you.
Commissioner Anderson, any questions?
No questions at this time.
And Commissioner Amador. generally, I guess the question for the applicant is working with staff. You're fairly comfortable with the new definitions that are presented in terms of what automobiles can be, I'm going to call them, recycled at your plant?
Yes, we basically recycle cars and light-duty trucks. We don't do big diesel trucks. We do some delivery vans, not many. Sometimes we end up with a car under a contract basis. But if it's anything larger than we normally serve, we usually sell it to a facility that handles larger trucks. So I feel that at the present time, it will cover 99.9% of our volume. If we decide to go to a different route, we understand that we'd have to go back in and get approval. But I think I'm pretty comfortable with what the language is now.
Thank you.
The only other thing is we put a 22-foot limit. We really didn't measure that, so we may have to go to 24, but we'll see on that.
Very good. Thank you. Does any other commissioner have any questions of the applicant? I'm looking down the list. It's like I might have one hand raised, but I can't tell. It says one person raised a hand, 6 attendees. Seeing none, I will close that portion of the meeting. This is the portion where we will ask the public to be able to comment, and per resolution for electronic meetings, public testimony is limited to written testimony submitted in advance or applicants who have registered to ask questions. With that being said, I'm gonna give pause for one moment. It looks like we may have 2 applicants that want to speak, and I'll turn it over to staff here. We have James Gardner and maybe Tim McManus.
I will unmute Wes Gardner. He is the first on our list to speak.
Hi, yes, thank you.
Mr. Gardner, thank you. You have 3 minutes.
Yes, can you hear me all right? You can't hear me, okay. I've just become familiar with the applicant when he first purchased the property and got to meet Norman, and I wanted to go down and see his existing operation. And he gave me a detailed tour of everything that you saw in the PowerPoint. And, I was very pleased with what they're doing and how it's impacting an industry that obviously everybody drives cars and they get in accidents, and the recycling part I think is terrific. I'm an adjacent landowner to the north and also to the west, and have been part of developing several hundred acres of the Phelps-Toyton and the Kushneroff subdivision. And this property that was previously owned by Raymond Rupert is a difficult piece of property for a lot of reasons. There were 2 ditches, the Frico O'Brien Canal and the Little Burlington. We were successful years ago working with Mayor Larry Ford and to build a bifurcation and to dry up that one ditch that's now been vacated. The point being is that that property is landlocked in between those ditches, and it's just a difficult property. We never could find a really good use for it, and so I think this is a terrific use. It sits down low. There's very little, impact to any of the existing neighbors. And like I say, I'm a neighbor to the north and to the west, and I'm satisfied and good with Norman and stadium use of the property. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. The next person to speak would be James West Gardner.
Okay, this is Tim McManus, not James Gardner. Should I proceed?
Sorry about that, Tim.
No problem. Should I proceed?
Yes.
Thank you. So my name is Tim McManus. I'm an industrial realtor for the past 50 years in the Denver metropolitan area. I've owned multiple parcels in and around Commerce City. And I've owned a parcel of ground across the street that goes from 100th and Havana. It's 31.2 acres. It borders on the north by the O'Brien Canal, your FRICO reference. I will not repeat what the gentleman before said because he said it so well, nor really make comment and waste your time on what I discovered by visiting the site of a stadium and what they do. But I have 31.2 acres there that's under contract to Scannell Properties. They're going to build a $35 million development there and are in the process of seeking approval for that final development with you today. As owner of that since 1979, I'm anxious to sell the property. Obviously, I was going to build on it myself and didn't do so, but I was concerned about a salvage yard being located what I heard and read across the street from my property and attended the first meeting. I was very impressed by, I intended to object to it, and I was very impressed by the presentation of Stadium and all the things that they thought about in going forward with this process and cooperating with the city. I also, as an aside, served 4 terms on Greenwood Village City Council and have been to many meetings and many zoning requests during that 8-year term, also on Parks and Trails for 2 years. So I understand what's going on here and understand the ability to object. I do not object. I applaud the method used in his operation, how he goes about it, how he's looking down the road at the future, and the very serious concerns about salvage yards. He's addressed each and every one, as you have seen this evening. So I would want to just summarize to say that, you know, I'm happy with the placement of the 38,000-foot building on 96th Avenue, effectively blocking view of what they do inside. I'm impressed by the border of the Highline Canal that blocks view of what they're doing all the way up to 100th Avenue where my property is. And I have no objections. I do not feel that there will be an adverse effect on the value of my property as a result of all the things that have been spoken to tonight. And so my recommendation is to proceed, and it has my support. Thank you. By the way, I'm a car collector of 50s, 60s, and 70s cars, so I'm a little bit biased. I love parts.
Very good. I don't believe I have anyone else registered to speak on the case right now that has registered, but I believe I do have some public comments. So can staff confirm no one else is registered in advance to speak on the case right now?
That is correct.
All right. Now we'll get into, I'll go ahead and read aloud any public comments or written comments that we have right now. So bear with me. I'm going to go ahead. I'm running 3 computer screens. So it's really small. So I have to like kind of blow it up. So I'm just going to read out loud. And then it looks like there's a preface of a gentleman named Scott White. And then there are 1, 2, 3, 4 questions that either the planner or the applicant will be able to answer. So I'm just going to read off a little preface real quick, and then we'll get into the 4 questions. So the questions come from Scott White. He says, "Hi, I am Scott White, the owner of one of the I-2 zoned businesses right off of Hines Highway, directly east of the proposed scrapyard. We have a beautiful light industrial park with manicured landscape and enclosed wood fences to protect our property values and the natural beauty of the property. I think he means agricultural zoned I3 scrapyard would be an eyesore and extreme noise pollution if they are running auto recycling equipment. This is also right on the canal, which has crested during high water runoff. While I think the project is not right for our neighborhood and ourselves because of these concerns, I understand we are in an industrial part of town. But at least so far, we are not a picture out of Santa Fe when it was lined with cars stacked up 3 high and oil and other chemical contaminants, the land and surrounding water. With that being said, his 4 questions are, and we'll go through them one by one, and it's probably, I'm gonna let the applicant speak first and then maybe staff. So question number 1 is, will there be recycling equipment, shredders, compactors? Someone from the applicant, maybe?
Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Okay, I called Mr. White as soon as I got a copy of the letter, and we had a long discussion. He said to me that he was on the last meeting and saw the power concentration, and that all concerns that he had brought up, he felt were adequately addressed. The only thing he was asking us about is we do have a car crusher, which is a table crusher. And I told him that the last time we had an OSHA inspection, we did a decibel reading on that machine, and we were under 93 decibels, which means that none of my employees even have to have earplugs. And after hearing that, he was very happy that he said, yeah, I think this would be good. I also called all the rest of the people in that industrial park, talked to most of them. A couple of them were supposed to call me back. And after I addressed any of their concerns, they seemed to have no objections. So I could go through each one of those lists, but Scott White seemed to be, after seeing our PowerPoint, satisfied, and he told me all 4 questions were answered to his satisfaction.
Very good. So I'm just going to kind of speed through these questions real quick. The next question was, how will you protect the environment and improve it? I'm going to lean to staff and go on the plank real quick and say that we will be in compliance or the business will be in compliance with local zoning codes and the EPA, correct?
That is correct, yes. As well, the applicant is providing a dust-free approved surface in order to place the car shells on the outdoor storage area in order to remove the potential for contamination of the soil. And they have also made the agreement with FRICO in order to make sure that water is not taken from the O'Brien Canal and maintain the current of that particular canal.
Very good, thank you. I'm going to direct the 3rd question to staff too, and I'll let you answer real quick, Brian. I believe I know the answer, but will you require a high fence which is solid and not allow autos to be stacked above it?
Yes, we are requiring the applicant to place an 8-foot fence along the east side of the property, as Mr. Delgado said. And we also have a 6-foot fencing on the north as well as the east, as well as the west side of the property, and it's a 6-foot fence on the wall on the front side of the property in order to mitigate potential screening.
Very good. And for any that's out there as well, there is a section in the packet that shows a section across the site that how cars will be stacked and how they will be lower than the fence as well, just for clarity. And then the last question on there, and I'm not sure how I would even answer that, is will you guarantee that our property values will not decline as a result of the scrapyard vicinity to our properties? Maybe staff could just allude a little bit about
building to improve this.
With the development as opposed to a vacant piece of land?
Before I answer that question, I also want to make sure that people understand that there won't be any vehicles allowed to be stacked on the outdoor storage. They will be lined up 5 in a row, but there will never be a stacking of vehicles. As far as property values, well, I cannot comment on potential future items by adding an additional use on that particular property, which we have already heard that it's difficult to develop in the first place. It could only mean that at the very minimum, we are making the efforts to make sure that that site is developed in a way that meets the criteria in our LDC, which takes into consideration those items such as property values.
Thank you. I see Steve Timms has his hand raised. Can we unmute him, please?
So just to build off of that, obviously the land development code doesn't consider property values, but it's a vacant lot, and they are proposing a sizable capital investment on the property. So we'll kind of leave it like that.
Thank you. With the public comments completely addressed in the applicant, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Is there can I get a motion from a commissioner? And please raise your hand because I have too many screens open. Thank you, Commissioner Kamak.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I move the Planning Commission enter a finding that, subject to conditions, the requested conditional use permit for the property located at 9750 East 96th Avenue, contained in case CU-124-20, meets the criteria of the Land Development Code, and based upon such finding, recommend that the City Council approve the conditional use permit subject to the following conditions. This conditional use permit is for storage and salvage of passenger vehicles and small shuttle buses only. No other types of vehicles, including but not limited to tractor trailers, semi-trucks, full-size buses, boats, heavy construction vehicles, or mobile homes is permitted. The storage or salvage of any other type of vehicle requires an amendment to this conditional use permit.
I'm sorry, just to interrupt. I'm sorry, Mr. Kamak. I think that you have the old conditions, and so that you are reading off of for A.
You're absolutely right.
We just wanted to make sure that I mean, it's up to you all as a commission, but I think that you were given the revised one, so just wanted to clarify that.
Scratch that. Oh, well, let me see. For some reason, I have lost it. Maybe somebody else could make the motion.
I will go ahead and make the motion if that's okay. So I move that the Planning Commission enter in a finding that the requested conditional use permit for the property located at 9750 East 96th Avenue, contained in case CU-124-20, meets the criteria of the Land Development Code, and based upon such findings, recommend that the City Council approve the conditional use permit subject to conditions. A, the conditional use permit is for the storage and salvage of vehicles to include passenger cars, single axle trucks, 1-ton trucks, vans, delivery vans, Class C RVs, and small type shuttle buses. All such vehicles not to exceed 22 feet in length. No other types of vehicles, including but not limited to tractor trailers, semi-trucks, full-size buses, boats, heavy construction vehicles, or mobile homes as defined in the Land Development Code are permitted. The storage or salvage of any other type of vehicle requires an amendment to the conditional use permit. Condition B, All work performed on vehicles, including repair, drainage of fluids, and dismantling, shall occur entirely within the building. Applicant can perform dismantling of additional pieces from car shells in the outdoor storage, so long as it does not require the drainage of fluids prior to removing the additional pieces. Condition C, following the commencement of the use and in the interest of maintaining harmony with adjoining land uses, the applicant will provide the director with a report detailing all complaints the applicant has received from adjoining landowners during the preceding calendar year, as well as the manner in which the applicant disposed of the complaints. The first report will be due upon or before January 31st of the year following the commencement of the use. Example, the use commences on August 1, 2021. The first report will be due January 31st, 2022, and will encompass the period between August 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2021. And subsequent reports will be due on or before January 31st of every other year, of each year thereafter. On or after August 30th, 2025, the director will review the applicant's reports as well as any violations reported to the city. If the reports and reported violations, if any, indicate that the use is not compliant with the conditional use permit approval criteria, the director may submit the conditional use permit to the Planning Commission and City Council for review at duly noted public hearings. The review will be for the limited purpose of identifying and imposing conditions reasonably necessary to address the complaints demonstrating non-compliance with the conditional use permit approval criteria, and will be rationally related to the conditional use permit approval criteria. Can I have a second?
I second.
Was that Kamak?
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner Kamak, for a second. Do we have any commissioner commentary, questions before we call for the vote? Seeing none, I'm going to ask Alexa to call for the vote.
Thank you. Commissioner Yost? Sorry, Commissioner Yost?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Jones?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Kamak?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
And Vice Chairman Amador?
Yes.
Thank you.
It appears that there's a favorable recommendation to go to the City Council. Congratulations on your endeavor, and hopefully the City Council will see it in the same light as the Planning Commission. Congratulations. All right. We'll go ahead and close that case out. Do we have any actions for staff in terms of legal staff introductions, presenting information?
I don't have anything for you tonight if you're asking for any legal business or attorney business.
Yes, attorney business. There we go. That's what I'm asking for. Sorry about that.
No, we do have the one more action item on the agenda though.
One more action item. What is our action item, city attorney?
So the final item on tonight's agenda is the city is seeking an exemption of subdivision requirement for the transfer of city-owned land for a 5-acre portion of land along the eastern side of parcel number 1723052130017, located at 11698 Chambers Road. Ms. Jenna Lowry of the city manager's office will be giving a short presentation on that.
Thank you.
If she could be unmuted.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. Hello, commissioners. As Mr. Hayter said, I am here tonight to discuss a necessary exemption of subdivision requirements for transfer of city-owned land for a 5-acre site in the Villages at Buffalo Run subdivision. Next slide, please, Alexa. The 5-acre parcel in question tonight for conveyance is located on the eastern side of Villages at Buffalo Run, adjacent to the 9-acre city park. Next slide. Here's the parcel as shown in the PUD zone document for reference. Next slide. So some background for you all. That same Villages at Buffalo Run PUD zone document that we just looked at was approved by City Council in 2000. As shown on the previous slide, a part of the document called out a 14-acre tract of land that was to be used for a future elementary school and park. That same parcel was dedicated to the city as a school site and park site with Villages East filing 1. Currently, the parcel remains under city ownership. Next slide. With Villages East filing 8, the city platted this tract into 1 lot for preparation of the neighborhood park construction. At that time, Commerce City and 27J worked together to plan the site to allow space for both a school site and park, which would include a ball field. Next slide. It is also important to note that the approved PUD zone document contains a sunset provision that in essence states if a permanent elementary school facility has not been constructed and is not planned for construction, once 80% of the single family residential structures approved and final plats have been sold, then 5 acres of the parcel should revert back to the developer. I won't read the exact language, but that's a summary of it. Next slide, please. With that sunset language in mind, the developer notified the city that their threshold had in fact been met. So city staff presented this information to council in a study session, and it was determined that 1, District 27J did not want to purchase the land. 2, the 5-acre site would not be large enough for a traditional elementary school. And 3, the city's parks department did not need the land for a neighborhood park. At that time, it was council's desire to explore purchasing the 5 acres. Next slide, please. With that direction, staff did conduct a site appraisal and presented the results of said appraisal to the city council. After that presentation, council directed staff to cease purchase efforts and to instead convey the land back to the developer. Next slide. As such, staff recommends exempting the division of land described as the 5-acre site from the subdivision standards, as the division at issue is not related to the purpose of regulations and because the exemption is within the best interest of the city. This recommendation is also supported by the Land Development Code. Next slide. If we look at the code, we can see that section 21-61002G states that standards related to the subdivision of land shall not apply to any division of land if it is determined by the city council that the division is not within the purpose of these regulations and that the exemption would be within best interest of the city. So based off of this exemption, staff went ahead and conducted a site analysis. Next slide. That analysis determined that the property is subject to the existing and legally binding agreement executed several decades ago. Both 27J and the city have reviewed and analyzed the property and determined that they do not wish to keep or acquire the land. City Council has directed staff to convey the land back to the developer. Once that happens, the developer will need to replat the 5 acres to accommodate for single-family homes, and taking a different course of action tonight would add additional time and money to that same future outcome. So this is certainly a unique situation on a property found in existing contracts and entitlements. Based on the review and decision of council, it is in fact within the best interest of the city to not spend additional money to plat the property into 2 parcels. Next slide. At this time, I would like to request the commission's direction on the exemption request. And since I'd like to remind you all that staff does recommend that we put forward a favorable recommendation to City Council to allow this subdivision exemption. Next slide. That being said, staff is available to answer any questions that you all may have. Thank you.
So I will go ahead and just do questions by the commissioners by name. And I'm going to start with Commissioner Yost.
Yeah, what, so the total property area is 5 acres, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And why, you said the Parks Department decided not to put a park in there?
Correct. So I believe the reason being is that's not part of their planned in our Parks Rec and Golf Comp plan. Is that correct, Mr. Hayter?
Actually, I don't think the contract, even though they did give that opinion, I don't think the contract allowed for us to put a park there. It was either going to be a school site with a 9-acre park, or it was going to revert back. I think what may have happened there was we did look into that to see if it was something we wanted to pursue in terms of purchasing the site, but the parks decided they did not want to expand into that area as well.
Thank you.
Just to build off of that real quick, I'm sorry, just to build off of that. Yeah, the Parks Department said because they already have their established park there in Villages East, and they actually own about 75 acres just on the other side of Chambers there in that Second Creek area. So they have ample, I guess, acreage already in their portfolio.
Understood, thank you. Will it be, I'm trying to frame my question. So this will be a parcel of land that we will not have to rezone, is that correct?
So it will have to be replatted to allow for single family use, which is what's laid out in the original contract.
And, okay. And that will require rezoning as well, yes.
Okay, okay. All right, that's all of my questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Jones, do we have any questions of staff?
No questions.
Commissioner Kamak, any questions?
I need to check with my dog because that's the prime location for puppy paws out there, but I have no questions personally.
Thank you. Commissioner Anderson?
I have no questions. Thanks.
And Commissioner Amador, myself. Yes, this is a tricky kind of conditions in case that come before us. I do agree that, you know, the whole replatting is going to have to happen. And based on the analysis that's put before us, I think it would be at least in the best interest of the city to move forward with what's presented before us. So I guess, can I have a motion from one of the commissioners? My view changed altogether, so I can't see it. Oh, there we go. Can I have a motion from one of the commissioners, please?
This is Karen. I move that the commission recommend exempting the division of land described as the 5-acre site at approximately 11698 Chambers Road from the subdivision standards, as the division at issue is not within the purpose of the regulations and the exemption is in the best interest of the city.
Can I have a second from Commissioner Jones?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion between the commissioners? Commissioner Yost raised his hand.
So if I understand this, the city will sell back the property to the subdivision, or?
Oh, we will be reconveying it, but that will not require them to purchase it back from us.
Okay, but they didn't purchase it from us in the first place. It was just given to them or just parceled out for them to use.
Correct.
So
Okay.
in the original agreement, as it was originally structured, it was dedicated to the city, but the city would pay in the future. So we would be paying for it now.
Oh.
Instead, so basically it was a deferred payment. So instead we're reconveying it back to them so we don't have to pay and they don't have to pay.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
I have no further questions.
Any other commissioners have any questions? I'm just looking down the side. Going once, going twice, seeing none. Can we call for a vote, please?
Yes. Commissioner Yost,
Yes.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner Kamak, sorry, Commissioner Kamak.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
thank you. And Vice Chairman Amador,
Yes.
thank you.
Looks like the vote is unanimous for a yes recommendation to the city council. And I see Steve is pretty happy there. Thank you. Moving right along in the meeting, it's time for commissioner business. Does anyone of the commissioners have any commissioner business they'd like to bring up? Please raise your hand in the Zoom meeting. Seeing none, I'll go ahead and close that piece. Trisha, no. Do we have any legal business?
We do not. I'm good.
And do we have any staff business?
Just to update the commissioners, so we will have another special meeting on Tuesday, July 21st. We have a case that night. And then we also have, I believe, 2 items scheduled at this time for August. So we will have some additional meetings here because we got a lot of development going on. So yeah, so look forward to that.
Very good. Thank you, staff. And I want to chime in and say that I need to be careful every time I say Alexa's name because my thermostats talk to me. And so I'll mute myself every time I say Alexa's name because she's listening and she's going to try to give me like some 80s playlist here.
That's funny.
So yeah, even when Brian said your name, she started talking, so I had to put mute on. It was pretty awesome. Thank you. With that being said, we adjourned the meeting, and have a good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew.
Yes.
Good night.